Welcome to the KIPS Personal Trainer Application Podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia, and we have a topic and something that anybody within the fitness industry can take, apply right away, and something that's needed right now. We have a lot of fit pros getting into the industry, changing their career within the fitness industry. So how can they improve their sales? We have somebody from my past that has done so much. In just a sec, he's going to share a lot of his career within the fitness industry, within the management side of it, setting up franchises, all that kind of stuff. But Mark, thank you for coming on the KIPS podcast and being my guest.
Hey, you're welcome, Tyler. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I really appreciate knowing you for so many years, and I'm glad to be on this podcast today. So thanks for inviting me.
Of course. And just to kind of set the tone for it, Mark was actually one of my first fitness managers. Every time that him and I connect, we chat, we even go back and share memories of times that he led discussions with the whole staff about sales and really gave me a lot of useful tips that I use today in 2021 and moving forward. I still use these things. So Mark, to kind of set the stage for the episode, can you share your background in fitness management and franchises that you've helped set up?
Absolutely, Tyler. I'd be happy to. I actually started my journey. If you want to go all the way back, just like most people in this space, they were active. They liked an active lifestyle. So, at the young age of 5 and 6, I started playing about every sport you can think of. And finally, I zeroed in the ones I liked. And of course, when you don't go pro, maybe the next best thing is to focus on how can you continue to stay in this element? How can you continue to stay in the movement realm and help other people with their aspirations to be either more athletic or achieve their performance goals or potentially just achieve their total wellness goals. So that's where I transitioned in college. And instead of going to play in a Division I school, I went to a Division I school for a Division I education. So I went to the University of Florida. I did my undergraduate work in exercise science. I did my master's work in sports management. And, I started my journey there. I started working in the recreation and fitness centers as a sophomore in college, and I kind of went through the ranks. I became one of the trainers on staff, and then I became the head trainer. When you're the head trainer, there's about 25 trainers on staff that oversee about 130 fitness supervisors in one of the three. So the University of Florida had 3 different weight, strength training rooms and cardiovascular rooms. So it was a pretty big program. So that's where I started, and I ended up going to grad school. And in grad school, I became the graduate coordinator for the entire program. So I oversaw all the supervisors and the head trainer. Also, I was oversaw the Lifestyle Appraisal Center at the University of Florida, which was basically for students and faculty, and all it was an assessment center. I mean, we did, Wingate tests, sub-max aerobic test, max aerobic test. We did, body composition testing, flexibility testing, strength testing, and muscular endurance testing. And we gave them a report card. So it was really a really fun experience in the collegiate setting to do that. And when I finished, I said, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with my life now? Do I want to go work for a sports team? Do I want to be a strength and conditioning coach for a university? Do I want to go the athletic director route? I got my strength and conditioning, my certified strength and conditioning specialist certification as soon as I could, right? You have to have your degree and a bachelor's of science degree to even sit for that exam. So I got it. So I could, work at the pro or collegiate levels, but I ended up saying, I'm going to move to the big city. So I moved to New York. And I started working for a little company at that time. It was just a small company. It was called Equinox Fitness Clubs. They only had 11 clubs in the city. They had nothing else. And quite the experience to go from, a university setting to a kind of the big city setting with really high level fitness. And I ran a personal training program there on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. We had actually 65 trainers in the one location.
Wow.
So it was fun. I mean, basically coming out of the university setting and my master's degree, and now all of a sudden I'm managing 65 trainers on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And some of these trainers have been training for 15, 20 years, so even though I had a good base of education and a good foundation for just managing and leading processes and people. I'd never, now I'm managing a 40-year-old trainer that's been training for 18 years, as a 25-year-old, 26-year-old leader at that organization. But so that was fun. We did a great job. Actually, the year that I was, the couple of years I was at that location, we did fairly well. We broke some records, some Equinox records. And as far as how many sessions were redeemed that year and how, the sales that we did. And I ended up moving with the company out to Los Angeles. They began opening clubs on the West Coast, and I helped them open up a number of clubs in West Hollywood,
wow,
Santa Monica, Palos Verdes, Huntington Beach. So that was a great experience to work with them. Now, of course, the transition. I actually met you at a different club company. I ended up transitioning. I did some entrepreneurial things for a couple of years and realized that I needed to get back into the club company world. And upon reentry, I instead of going back to Equinox, which I could have, fortunately, I still had a great relationship with the group there and could have gone back to them, but ended up taking an opportunity to work with a club company called Spectrum, which was another big club company in the Southern California area. Now it's called the Bay Clubs. And ended up helping them in a number of capacities. One, running one of their clubs in the Pacific Palisades in more of a general management role. And then I moved to their flagship where I met you, Tyler, at the Manhattan Beach Club, where I was the fitness / personal training manager. And I think, what do we have? About maybe 40 trainers?
40-ish, yeah. 40-ish.
Somewhere around there. So it was still a really big program. I left and moved to Fayetteville, Arkansas after I spent a few years at the Bay Clubs or Spectrum. And the reason I did that is because there was one of the former VPs, former vice presidents of Lifetime Fitness, which is, if you know fitness and you've been around it long enough, Lifetime is one of the big gorillas in the space. One of the VPs had left Lifetime, sold his shares. He had opened about 30 or 40 clubs for them. And he purchased his own club in little Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's not too small, but where the Razorbacks play. And he was really just putting together a team of experienced, tenured people to help him turn that club around. It was a 65,000 square foot club with, outdoor tennis courts and 2 pools and indoor track and basketball courts and racquetball courts. I mean, it was really a monster club. And that was a fun experience because I got to blend my Equinox / Bay Clubs or Spectrum knowledge and my knowledge from the University of Florida with a 30-year vet that ran Lifetime fitness clubs at the highest levels. And, Lifetime does a really good job running their clubs. So we got to, it was almost like we were able to meld or mesh the best of Equinox with the best of Lifetime into his club company at the Fayetteville Athletic Club. So that was really fun experience. Really made some really good strides with that program. Since moving back to California, I went really more into the entrepreneurial route. It really just stayed in the wellness and fitness space, but moved away from working for others and working for myself. So, now it's much more entrepreneurial, is looking at technology and how to help other trainers, as you do, grow their business and really expand and be better at their trade.
Yeah. I remember, I do have to add, because I remember you also helped open, I think, the Huntington Beach Club as well, in that return, because I got to put that on the pile, all the clubs you helped open. And something that came to my mind that I would say that we kind of share is that we were young leaders. At one point, I was 27 and I was the VP of NCCPT. And it's a different experience and a unique part of your history that I think might also play a role in even your leadership and organization skills. Is you were a Marine. I believe you were also in charge of a platoon, was it? And can you expand on that a little bit?
Hoorah. Yes, I was. I was a Marine Corps. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. However, I have a joke about that. I was a reservist. So as a reservist, you go to boot camp at Parris Island, you do your combat training, you do your job school wherever whatever your mission occupation specialty is. I happen to be an amphibious tanker. So I went out to Camp Pendleton in beautiful Southern California and learned how to drive, 30-ton tanks. And it was a wonderful experience. And I came back. The joke is, as a weekend warrior, so in the Marine Corps, once you're done with your 6 months of active training, which every single Marine goes through the same training, at the end of that 6 months training, they have two groups. And one group says, hey, Smith, you're going to Camp Lejeune and you're going to check into your unit there because they signed a 4-year contract and they're going to be full time. Or they say, Myers, go back home and, go to your Jacksonville unit once per month. And, so I always would say, hey, you can call me whatever you want. If you want to call me a weekend warrior, but you can also call me at home on Wednesday next week.
I dig it. With that experience, do you feel like that helped your leadership style or even your management style with all the different companies you've been with?
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I mean, obviously any person that goes through the vigorous training of a armed services is going to get a benefit from that. Obviously different services are going to have different levels of intensity. The Marine Corps is one of the most intense because, the Marines are the first to go in and fight, and they usually do the heaviest type of fighting. So the importance of teamwork, camaraderie, and understanding, exactly what you need to do is really high. Now, of course, not that you don't get phenomenal training in the Navy and the Army and the Air Force, you do, but of course, they're a little bit different focus. So I would say discipline was in working as a team, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, particularly, is so important. And I utilized, the discipline that I learned, and obviously working as a team, really to my advantage. And I applied that across a lot of levels of leadership. So it definitely did help.
Very cool. And coming from a military family, I know that my father, my stepdad, they would always talk about I'll call it the discipline, as you mentioned, but also helping get organized and being on a routine. And I could see how those would apply in any type of profession, not just fitness management, but any type of profession, as well as setting yourself up for success within those. So very fascinating to hear that. That sparked in my mind thinking about your history, your career, all those types of things. And I've always wondered how that played a role in it. And as we transition now, we set the stage now for your background, and it's a great one. It's just fantastic to hear how you went from working at the University of Florida and in the management capacity that you were there to then transitioning to the big city and working with Equinox when there were just 11 clubs. And now anybody that knows of Equinox, they're at the top of the chain, if you ask me, and they're across the country. So great to hear all those things you did within Equinox. And now talking about sales, bringing it back to what we want to discuss in this episode. And I think one of the interesting things that I think a lot of people take away with it is when you have worked with new entry-level trainers, so they just got their certification, whether it's a weekend one or they took their time and they did it online and then they went and got their certification. What are some of the basics you try to share with them and things that you try to teach them in order to set them up to start working on the gym floor, meeting clients, and hopefully selling them on packages?
Great question, Tyler. I mean, I think if we're focusing on that individual, that little greener, right? They love fitness. They're passionate about it. Obviously, they went through the appropriate steps to get the knowledge and the certification they need to prove that they can work with others. I mean, at that point, my focus is really making sure they understand how to get the most out of their time on the floor. So if you think about being in a club setting, a lot of times trainers don't realize that every single minute that they're getting compensated, because a lot of times the companies will compensate you just to simply be out there to help and talk to members. And I just want to make sure, is my assumption correct in answering this question, to really focus on the window of time that a new trainer has on the fitness floor in which they potentially are getting compensated to really help others? Is that kind of the focal point, or?
You could take it both ways. I think you could take it in that way, and then any way you want, really. I'll find a tangent to go off.
Yeah, no, I actually, you know what? I will. That's good point. I think we can go both directions. So one direction would be, hey, there's an assigned time that you're the leader of your club, whether it be you're working directly with the general manager because the club is smaller, or you're working with some type of a personal training or fitness manager because there's different layers. The club has a little bit more sophistication.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're going to be assigned to work the floor certain days, certain time frames. And I think it's really important for people to understand how to optimize that. And when I say optimize it, it's, you know, think about a business, when you're running a business, you want to think about, what are my KPIs? What are my key performance indicators here? What are the things that if I do, I'm going to get the most return on my investment?
Mm.
So walking around, I'm not saying that keeping things tidy is not important. It absolutely is important. And if you talk to any trainer that worked for Equinox, that was a huge component because they wanted everything to be pristine. But more importantly, what are you doing to showcase your knowledge? Right. So if you're not able to showcase your knowledge in a way that's applicable, then you're not really getting the most bang for your buck. And let's go the other way. The other way is maybe you're not getting paid to be on the floor to help members. Maybe you just need to find ways to get in front of members. Well, either way, whether you're getting paid or not, the idea is that you need to be able to showcase your ability to help them. And that all comes down to being approachable and also being confident enough to approach others, right? Because if you're not confident enough to approach them, how are you going to ever gain a conversation and share with them how you can really streamline their results, right? Because essentially that's what a trainer does. A trainer helps you get from point A to B in a significantly faster time frame than if they were just traveling that course on their own. So I think that's really important, is being confident, being able to get in front of people, being able to show them how you can help them. And there's a whole nother series of dialogue we could go through on that. But I think that's the most important thing, getting them ready and comfortable to having a lot of conversations. How many conversations can you have? Not about the weather or politics, but about, why is the person there? What are they doing? And are they enjoying what they're doing? And why are they doing what they're, all those internal questions that people should be asking themselves that are spending time at a club.
Yeah, that's really a great way to think about it in terms of your reps, but even just being a part of the gym floor. One, you're getting paid for it, but two, thinking about it in terms of your return. If you're out there, if you're meeting people, and it's important to remember in my mind that you're always on the clock, or you're always in the view of members. Members are watching. They need something to distract them when they're doing cardio sometimes. So they'll be looking around, trying to find and see things. And if you are appearing professional, if they see that you're approachable, if they see that you work for the company and they have a question, they're going to come up to you. If they feel like that is something easy for them to do, yeah, of course, they'll come up to you. They'll chat with you. They'll ask a ton of questions. Something that you touched on that I think would be great to go into next is that approach. I think that is actually one of the hardest parts of being a fitness pro or a personal trainer working at a gym where you do have to sell your own training, is that approach part. Because one, I think consumers are getting a lot smarter. And I think from years of media, TV shows, movies, making fun of personal trainers and the whole, I'm a macho personal trainer, I'm going to sell you on this package, you're going to buy this and you're going to get jacked. They think that you're just going to essentially just sell them right off the bat. But I think that relationship part is important to the whole process of it. With somebody that is green, somebody that is new, how do you typically build that confidence in them and to get them to that part where they feel like, yeah, I can make any kind of conversation with anybody?
Great question, Tyler. And I'll do is I'll go to a specific example, and these are for sometimes the more bashful trainers, at least initially. I think once trainers get more confidence, and some people, just have outgoing personalities, and they could start a conversation with anybody, anywhere, anyways. So then they just need to know how to direct that conversation so it's actually, it's not just a fun conversation. It's actually this person wants to know more about what you know, and they want to learn more from you, and they want to obviously get guidance from you. So, if someone is a little, let's go to the cardio, right? So you said a lot of people are doing cardio, and one of the things that is a little more problematic these days than it was, maybe earlier in my career, whereas there wasn't as many headsets back in the day, right? Because people didn't bring their Walkmans and their
Walkmans.
I'm aging myself here, but they were listening to music that was played over the loudspeaker, and of course they having earbuds and those types of things. It wasn't quite as normal as today. But think about today. I mean, you've got somebody on the cardio, and we know that I would say 8, maybe 9 out of 10 people doing cardio, as a trainer would know, that is educated, realizes that 8 or 9 out of 10 probably are doing more cardio than they should, specific to where they need to be on their total wellness and weight loss goals. They think that the cardiovascular activity is really getting them further than it is. And not to mention that the cardiovascular activity they're doing, they're probably not even doing it at an optimal level, right? They're not even managing their zones. They're not working on their peak aerobic oxidative levels. They're not, pushing themselves on their anaerobic threshold. So a lot of conversations that can be had on the cardio. And, the good thing about cardio in a club is that they're a captive audience. They're not going anywhere, right? They're right there. So, one of the things that I've talked to with more trainers that are a little bit more timid, or trainers that aren't, is just to have a little survey to come up and say, hey, hey, Bill, if you don't mind, I know you're getting after it on the step mill here. Do you mind me going through a brief little survey with you just to learn more about what you're doing and give us some insight on how we can better serve you? And that's it. A lot of times they're like, absolutely, right? They want to be helpful. I mean, as long as they're not like in the middle of an interval and they look like they're really focused on their cardio, most of them are going to be okay with taking their earbuds out and answering a few questions. So now you got to define what that survey is about, right? Because survey could be about, hey, what do you think about the club? Is the locker room clean enough? Would you like Q-tips? So, that's not the questions you want to ask. The questions you want to ask are, how long have you been a club member? How often do you come to the club? What are the goals that you have? Have you reached the goals that you've wanted to since you've joined the club? Like these, what do you do? Like what's your percentage of time on doing cardio versus strength? These are the kind of questions that you want to ask, because it really gives you a picture of what they normally do when they're there, what their goals are, and have they met their goals? Because then if you start getting answers back, it allows for you to interject. And you want, the whole rule is don't ask closed-ended questions. Don't ask yes or no questions. Ask questions that pose them to give an answer. Like, what kind of results were you looking for when you came here? Tell me, those types of things. Not did you get results? It's like, how long did it take you to get the results? Maybe they say, well, I'm still working on it. Like I still haven't gotten there. As opposed to. So those are really engaging questions, and those can really lead to, well, hey, I think there's a lot of opportunity here to take you to the next level. And, you say whatever, they say something that raises an eye, well, you can actually address it and say, it's specific to your strength training. You said your mixture is X% of cardio versus strength, or maybe they don't even do strength. They just take a couple of classes that they think are strength related, where you can say, listen, I think you're going to get so much more on that goal that you're focused on with doing some really structured strength and conditioning work. How long are you going to be on the cardio today? 5 more minutes. How about before you leave, we go through a little work on the floor so I can really share with you some ways that you can hit that goal you're talking about faster, utilizing different methods of exercise to get there. So those are the kind of things you just have to be confident enough to engage and listen to what they say, but ask the right questions. So they're kind of leading the person into where you want them to go.
Yeah. I think that proves exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast for that specific example there, because it's something that somebody just getting into the industry, they can take that right now. They can, if they heard this episode right now, they can take that, go apply it tomorrow or today, whenever they're listening to the episode, and potentially get some results off of it, because it doesn't come off as being salesy. It comes off as being genuine. You're learning, you're creating a connection, and you don't know what's going to come from that. And something that kind of popped in my mind there with, it'll probably be an experience question, because right now in the fitness industry, I feel like it's very popular that people say, oh, you need a niche down. You'd have a niche in terms of, if you want to grow your business, you just need to get these types of clients. You got to stay within your niche. But for somebody that's new, that doesn't know what their niche is, or, okay, do I need to just try to get people that are falling into my niche area, that these are the type of people that I want to train, or being more general? It's kind of a, where do I go? In your experience, what have you seen has worked better for a new trainer, or even somebody just trying to improve their personal training sales? Should they niche down, or should they just try to be more general and speak to more people?
Tyler, that's a really good question. And of course, when trainers or professionals get better at specific area of their trade, they become more and more valuable in that one area because they focus on it more than perhaps others. And they become an expert of experts. Now, the question then becomes, are you limiting yourself in that niche? And maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But again, if you desire, you really are, you gravitate towards a certain area of fitness, then of course you want to do that because you're passionate about it. And if you're passionate about it, you're probably going to be better at it. And if you're better at it, you're going to want to be smarter and wiser, and you're going to be more valuable to people, right? But the niche that most new trainers should be focusing on is weight management, and weight management for generally a middle-aged to upper-age population. Reason is that niche is really big. We're talking about 80% of the population. And of course, when you're looking at ages, obviously, as someone, training can be affordable for any age, right? If they just know how to manage their finances. But, generally people that are at the 40 age range, they're at a point where they've probably worked really hard. They have neglected their health for a specific period of time. So in addition to their weight management issues, they might even have some biomechanical issues and pain issues. And they should have a little bit more disposable income. So that is the niche that I say, get really good at weight management, and ultimately, integrating in some, very minimal things that can help alleviate, strain or stress in certain joints. You don't have to be a physiotherapist or some type of post-rehab specialist, but you can kind of shore up your knowledge on, if they have complained of continual shoulder pain, what are some things that they can do just to alleviate, just to make it feel better, even for a short period of time. And those, obviously that's probably not why they're talking to you. They're there because they want to lose weight and they want to feel better. So that's just an extra bell or whistle, but focus on helping them get to their end goal as fast as possible, which is probably more energy and more self-esteem through improved body composition, right? And reduce the body fat and increase the lean mass.
I dig it. And experience right there, right? Showing you right there with times that you've worked with trainers and getting them ready for the gym floor. And as we get to the next question here, again, it'll be another based off your experience, because you've worked in a variety of clubs, big ones, big training in terms of teams that are 40, 50, 60 trainers on staff. And with those, I mean, you already mentioned it, that sometimes you were working with trainers that have already been in the industry 10, 15 years. And I think as a whole, we can probably say that not every personal trainer is just racking it up in the gym in terms of each check. They're like, yo, I'm just killing it right now. And I think for anybody listening, this could be a good point to listen and hopefully take something away with veteran personal trainers now. What do you feel like are some mistakes you've seen them make that are really hurting their sales? Maybe do you feel like it's more mental, or do you feel like they've just been in a routine or they weren't given the tools to succeed?
Yeah, great question, Tyler. I think, and I don't want to hurt the feelings of any veteran trainers out there that are listening to this. But sometimes it's important to just kind of see what you can't see. Most people, when they've done something for a long time, they somewhat put their blinders on, and they may not, they may just miss things that they shouldn't be missing. So I think with the veteran trainers, it's important for them to just always focus on continual growth. And listen, I've worked with enough trainers and enough veteran trainers to hear that, yes, I'm always open to growth, but the action there's a term in Hebrew, it's called Shema, and it means to listen. But in Hebrew, Shema is like two sides of the same coin. Listen and hear, but also do. So, sometimes, any age trainer doesn't matter if they've been doing it for 20 years or 3 years, might say, hey, I'm always looking to grow. I'm always looking to learn. Teach me, I'm moldable. But when the rubber meets the road, are they really? So I think that with veteran trainers, what I see the biggest challenge for them is cutting corners. And when I say cutting corners, because they know a lot and they've worked with a lot of people, they realize that there's most of their clients are going to fall in one of two buckets with regard to how they program. So they tend to fall into too much of a vanilla programming where every program that they're doing with their clients looks the same. And maybe even the conversations on the front end sound the same. And maybe they don't do as thorough of a process of maybe analysis on the front end, your assessment things. And, so really it's making sure you never cut corners, treat every client as if, they're new to training and you're new, you're the one that, I guess where I'm going here is just to keep it simple. Don't cut corners, don't cut short assessment. Don't cut short the programming conversation. Don't expect just because you've been training for, 15, 20 years that they're going to, just write a check just because you've got the experience. Show them, them that you can do what you can do. I think that's the biggest recommendation I would have for any veteran trainers that feel they're in a rut. They're like, go back to the basics. A, B, C, don't skip them, and just treat every client as if they were, you're a new trainer and they're a brand new to fitness, and take them through the process and really show them your value.
Yeah.
That's the key.
I dig it. And I can picture some of those in my mind. And as we move into the next question here, I'm already picturing some of these trainers, and it's something that if we pull back from, I'll say, our experiences working when you were my manager, my fitness manager, and I think back to that time and looking at the top trainers of that period, they all had different personalities, styles of training, but also education-wise, all very different. And I think it's probably hard to say that there's one thing that they all had probably common. Maybe there are, but in your experience, do you feel like there are some traits that successful personal trainers have that help them make those sales, that help them in those types of pressure conversations where they do need to close on a sale?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the old cliche, you probably heard this before. And if you haven't, then you'll hear it. It's not the first time you'll hear it, but if they don't like you and trust you, they're not going to buy from you. So the first thing you always want to make sure people do is they feel very comfortable with you. They're not on guard. And also they trust you. If you don't have the answer, don't act like you do. Sometimes people will ask a question that's just a little bit outside of your scope. So don't act like you're a podiatrist if they ask you some very detailed question about their foot fracture of 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. So those are that's the first step. And the second step would be really honing in on your communication skills, making sure that you understand the communication style. And Tyler, you know where I'm going with this, and I won't get into too much details. Maybe we can do another course or something on this, but it's really understanding how you communicate and how the other person communicates. Because there's 4 dominant communication styles, and most people kind of understand this to a higher level. But when you really drill down on it, there are ways to really understand quickly. We're talking within 30 seconds of a conversation with someone to really pin down what their dominant communication style is. And if you know what that is, and you also know what your communication style is, that's dominant, then you really understand how you may need to speak a little bit differently than you would customarily speak with that person to ensure they understand you. And I'll give you an example. It's that you could say the same thing to someone, but if you communicate it to them using a communication style or a dominant communication pattern that they're not familiar with, they're not going to hear it. But you could say the exact same thing according to the communication style that you know that they operate in, and they're going to completely understand what you said, and it's going to move them to action. So that's really, I think those are the key components, is really making sure that they trust you, they like you, you make them feel comfortable, right? And then the secondary part is understanding how they communicate, and more importantly, even understanding how you communicate, so you can flex those communication styles when needed, so people can truly understand what you're saying. Because the last thing you want to do is tell them something and they just don't understand it. They don't get it because you didn't speak their language. Even though you both speak English, you didn't speak driver analytical language because you are an expressive, amiable personality. So they just didn't quite get what you were saying, even though you're speaking English. That makes sense.
Probably the best tip right there of this whole episode, even though that I did like the one about approaching people on cardio equipment, that is actually in the opening of this podcast episode. I was mentioning about how things that I apply to this day, that is something that I learned from Mark over 10 years ago that I still apply in my day-to-day work as a manager, with working with different contractors and things along that nature. And it's something that actually helps myself, understanding yourself as a fitness pro and the way that you communicate and the way that you process things. And I know exactly where it is in my office, the personality type test that Mark had our whole team do when he was at the time, I think he was just the trainer, but he was one of the top trainers at the club, and he had the whole team do it. And it's something so useful that beginners or veterans can apply right away. And I just have to homer that away with this episode, is that was probably the best piece of advice of this whole episode. So look into that if that interests you. And I think that we'll probably look at another podcast episode going over those things, because you learn so much from it. You can take so much and apply it, not just in personal training. So Mark, as we now wind down the podcast and get to our podcast takeaways, I'm going to do things a little different. I want you to provide 3 pieces of advice based off your experiences being a manager, personal training, sales, all those things. What are 3 pieces of advice that somebody listening can walk away with, apply, and hopefully get some use out of them?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to things that were useful and beneficial to me over the course of my career, I think you look at 3 different paths, especially if you're in the fitness space. One would be movement. How can you understand and master movement, across a number of different spectrums? So, whether you're working with KIPS online and really drilling down on, a specific population of individuals, whether it's rehabilitative or some type of other specific niche focus, that's going to be key. You're really understanding movement and how movement applies to a certain population. But also you have to think about mindset, right? So it's also think about movement, which is kind of applying your trade in the way that you learned it, right? Biomechanics and physiology, to mindset. And that's part of that is communication style. So really understanding how to optimize your day through what you get out of your day through your mindset. And of course, you're going to be able to help others do the same, right? Because not only are you a movement coach, a lot of times you are a performance coach, and that can be every bit as a mental or mindset as being able to move well. So those are two. And then of course, the third is, as we all know, you can't outrun your fork, right? So the joke is, hey, if we can't get somebody to think differently about their consumption, it's going to be hard for them to, move as much as they should to get to their ultimate goal, which is usually weight management driven. So the three tiers of the, three legs of the stool are maximizing and understanding movement and biomechanics. So that way you can create great programming, get people stronger, faster, and healthier. Mindset, so they're more consistent. They optimize their sessions, and you're optimizing your career, so you're never lacking on learning and understanding personal development. And then the third leg of the stool is, hey, we got to make sure, even though we're not registered dietitians or maybe not even certified in nutrition, different states have different rules on how much you can speak to that, but you will be someone that can help them with getting more, making better choices for what they're consuming. And that's, as you know, it's a huge part of the equation when it comes to weight management.
Oh yeah. The one I want to chime in on there, it is with your education and knowing your stuff. It goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast about consumers being much smarter these days. I will tell you that is one of the things that I feel has really helped me over my career, even when I was training more. I haven't trained in a while, but it was something that clients would flock to trainers that they clearly knew what they knew, that they knew their stuff. They had that background and they applied it in a safe and effective way. And I think it goes back to a little bit of confidence too, when somebody asks you a question that, and this could be personality too, that if you don't know it, you say you don't know it. But if you do know it and you have some experience on it, sharing it from a evidence-based area, people appreciate that. And if it makes sense, they will be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. This person's credible. Because consumers, they have so many different areas that are being thrown at them these days. A lot of consumers will come in having seen something on social media and ask you about it. Then you have to be able to answer it in a effective manner that makes sense, that shows your credibility and your professionalism. If you just tear into it and you act in an unprofessional way, they'll remember that. But if you stay professional and you can essentially break it down for them in a manner that they can comprehend and that they can walk away with, they'll respect you. They'll come to you every single time with those questions. So really important stuff there. Mark, as we wrap up the podcast here, can you share your website stuff that you're working on now, or even talk about it too, social media links and potentially anything that you have coming up?
Yeah, thanks so much, Tyler. I think one of the things that I've been working on, and you know about this as well, is just really being able to assess people much more efficiently and utilizing technology these days. Unfortunately, all the things happening over the last couple of years, it's becoming more and more difficult to get in a certain proximity of space with people. There's a lot more concerns about people being closer for various reasons, but when it comes to body composition, we have technology out there that literally with one picture from a cell phone, you can get and highly accurate body composition that's comparable to DEXA. So I would encourage people to take a look at mybodyfatscan.com. That's a website that I have, mybodyfatscan.com, and sign up for a complimentary account. And we have pro accounts as well, but you can literally acquire credits. Each credit is good for a scan, and you take the picture. It goes through the specifics of how you should stand. It gives a black and white silhouette, so there's no image that it actually is saved of the individual, so it's very confidential. And it basically runs an algorithmic application of all your, body surface area, and it will give you a very accurate body composition. Your lean mass, your fat-free mass. It even looks at your abdominal fat, so it can give you an estimate of just the abdominal fat because we're looking at a lateral image. So it's really a powerful, and you can get measurements too. Chest and glutes and calf and thigh, et cetera, and your abdominal measurement. So it's really nice that you can do that with just one picture. So
yeah,
thanks for letting me share that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And speaking from experience, one, super convenient if you are running your own business. And this was something that once Mark shared it with me a few months back, I was like, wow, this is a powerful tool that if you have a boot camp or your own PT business, and maybe you're a contractor going in and out of different facilities, such a useful tool to track, show progress, and exactly what Mark was saying with it being reliable. I can attest to it. I've used it myself. Any client can go home, use it themselves, and it's that easy. And so it's such a great tool for that you can show, yep, we can use technology, we can track your body fat, all these things in that manner. And if you think back to, and I'm ranting a little here, but think back to when you had to do hands-on body fat analysis, you're pinching, or even if you're working with somebody from the opposite sex, making sure that you're not crossing any boundaries with it. Here's something that all you need is a photo, and such a great tool to check out. And we'll make sure that we throw a link in the comment or in the description for it so you can check it out. And Mark, thank you for being on the KIPS podcast. Such a useful episode. This whole episode just flew by for our recording. So I got to say thank you again for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the time.